Raina Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your rant line, rave line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there?
Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that rave line! Woohoo! Oh, I can't believe USC is 7-5 again. Oh no!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Retro Radio, episode 565, coming to you on Wednesday, October 9th. We're going to look ahead to USC and Penn State locking horns at the Coliseum, 12:30 p.m. on CBS. We're going to preview it, give you our thoughts, our predictions, and so much more. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at Rant of Troy. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rant of Troy. Email address, rantoftroy@fanside.com. And our phone number, 818-643-7227. Second Whisper Joe. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Rant of Troy studio, Lisa D'Artolo.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Do you remember our old phone number?
213 323 no 213 1 USC.
Well, that's how it ends. I
213.
I don't remember it off the top of my head, which is probably good. So that way we don't give the wrong phone number out, right?
It was 213-373-1 USC.
That's what it was. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Don't call that number.
Call that number.
Call the new number, 818-643-7227. If you're going to call in the Rant Line during the game, after the game, you got a question for the podcast, any of those things. The reason I ask is I'm very I'm not a big fan of all the AI stuff. For a couple of reasons. One, I work in a creative field, right? And so I think there's a little cutting corners and not crediting people if you're going to use AI artwork and that kind of stuff, right? The other thing is so much of things being called AI is not actually AI, or it's stuff that already existed, but we just didn't call it AI until now, right? All of this stuff is always it's annoyed me in the last year or so. So I have not used ChatGPT until I saw this TikTok and they have a new voice feature and you can talk to ChatGPT and they can talk to you in any voice. So I downloaded the app, and I'm like, can you give me a really British Cockney accent and talk back to me? Yeah, mate. And he's doing this whole thing, and I'm asking him questions about the podcast. It was wild. It knew who you were. It knew who I was. It knew we were married.
That was the weird one. It knew we were married.
It was weird. But the crazy part, I asked for the phone number, and it knew the Rant Line phone number.
The new one or the old one?
It was the old one.
Yeah, well, because that's the problem with as someone in sports who we've done a lot of not experimenting, evaluation of how AI is going to come into the frame for us. Mm-hmm. The big reason that we aren't really leaning on it very much is because generally ChatGPT is 2 years behind. It doesn't have up-to-date information,
sure.
Which in my line of work, where we're writing about what's happening literally today or this season, it's not super useful, but yeah, I'm not surprised that it gave the old phone number. It's just a little bit wild about the information that's out there.
So when I asked about you and then asked about me, it knew that I provide a historical context on USC football, which was weird.
Yeah.
Because I'm I'm more historical and you're more analytical or something, whatever you want to break it down, right? It was very weird how it knew that part, which is
I will say
it's sourcing from Google. Who's writing that? Where is that written?
I'm wondering if it's transcripts of the auto transcripts of the podcast. But
maybe
I'm gonna call out ChatGPT because you asked it for an example of one of your food takes.
Oh, I did say I said does Michael have any food takes? And it was shoot, I should bring up the thing right now. I asked about the food. Can I access my last chats? Here it goes. Does he have any food takes? Yes, Mike Castillo is known for sharing food takes, particularly on social media. He's expressed his opinions on various foods and Los Angeles eateries, adding a fun and personal touch to his online presence. It's a quirky aspect of his personality that fans of Reign of Troy Radio enjoy. And I said, okay, what are one of his food takes? And it says, one of Mario Castillo's notable food takes is his strong stance against pineapple on pizza. He's mentioned his dislike for this controversial topping a few times, sparking lighthearted debates among his followers and fellow USC fans.
I just think that's your most tame food take. Like, of all the food takes you have, that's extremely tame and popular, in fact. Like,
like I was expecting to say peanut butter is ass.
Yeah, or like that food shouldn't touch.
Yeah,
or
like the staples, the pillars of my life.
Yeah.
I don't know. AI, what are you doing? Let me ask: is USC going to beat Penn State? Let's see what it says. Not in voice because I used the 10 minutes. It's typing. It's figuring this out. The upcoming game between USC and Penn State looks to be a close battle. While Penn State is favored, USC has the potential to pull off an upset at home. Some experts predict the Trojans play with their backs against the wall or rise to the occasion. USC is currently 3-2 and coming off a tough loss, while Penn State is undefeated at 5-0.
Oh,
Predictions are split. Some see the Trojans winning a close one, 31-27, while others believe Penn State will continue its strong form and win by a touchdown. It'll be a tight contest, but if USC can find consistency, especially on offense, they could edge it out. All right. That's it. That's the podcast. We'll see you
I guess we don't need to do a podcast now.
No, it's over.
Yeah. AI is taking all of our jobs, guys.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah. All right. We got a lot to get into. Let's get into quick news. All right. The only news that I sort of put in the our little rundown here, which is pretty long, talking about a big game in SC and Penn State, is that SC might not be having Eric Gentry on the field on Saturday, nor next Saturday, nor the following Saturday. He might redshirt due to multiple concussions so far this season. Lincoln Riley was asked about it on Tuesday. He said, quote, "No final decision has been made. We're going to keep evaluating just how he's feeling and how he's progressing. He's back with us, doing everything right now, but the full practice. He's already been able to ramp up some of the physical activities ongoing, but in this day and age, I don't know if you can say one way or another about a red shirt right now. It's just the way the rules are."
Yeah, I mean, I think there had been a slight suspicion of, or at least a slight concern about Gentry. 2 concussions in the span of 4 games. That's not good. That you have real concern for the health, the overall and long-term health of the player.
Mm-hmm.
So he's played 4 games, and it's a question of, do you just take the red shirt and preserve some eligibility and come back next year and see what you can do? Or is he able to get cleared early enough that that they go ahead and throw him back in there? I think a lot depends, honestly, on something like the result of this weekend. Because I think that if Eric Gentry, let's say, because Tua Tagovailoa is going through this, and they put him on IR, basically said he's going to be out for 4 weeks at least while he gets his concussion concerns settled. Right. And for Tua, like once he's ready to play, he's going to want to play. But if you're Gentry, and during the course of the, let's say, 3 to 4 weeks that you miss, USC has lost to Penn State and maybe another one or anything like that, like USC isn't competing for anything significant, then maybe he does look at it and say, you know what, I'd rather preserve my eligibility and come back later. I don't know. It's a strange calculation. I would hope that a bigger part of that calculation is how can I protect my brain from further damage? And is playing football for the rest of this year counter to protecting my brain from further damage? But there are football considerations here. There are personal and professional considerations here. I get it.
It's difficult because his health is the most important thing, bar none. Obviously, for football reasons, SC needs him out there ASAP, right? Absolutely, 1,000 times over. But we're talking about brain health, talking about quality of life. We're talking about all those things. That is more important than football at the end of the day, right? So, like, I get it. This is a world in which you only get so many years of eligibility. It's college football. You need a lot of tape to go to the next level, all those things. So it does make sense that he'd want the biggest run of games that he could to be able to do that, in addition to being healthy. So if it's the best scenario in a couple of different senses for him to do that, then more power to him. It's not one that'll help SC on the football field, but again, his health is more important than that. So we'll see how it all comes to be. Don't expect him on Saturday, obviously.
This is a really good example of something that Lincoln Riley has called for that I tend to agree with. That Riley's stance is that they should get rid of red shirts altogether and just give players 5 years of eligibility. And I think that we would see, I think that we would see players not have to make the calculation of, if I come back this year, I have exhausted my eligibility and I've only managed to play, 20 games in the last 3 years. So you have guys making that calculation. Just give them all 5 years with a 6th year medical potential kind of stuff. But that's not the rules right now. So
yeah, and we saw the COVID year given, right? We know that the roster limits are going up. I think it would make sense. Plus, I think that the 4-game rule for red shirts is great. So it used to be you couldn't play more than a quarter of your season, a quarter or a third. I think it was a quarter of your season, and it could only be like the first quarter of the season or whatever it was. And then it got changed to 4 games no matter what. So you could play at the end of the year if you hadn't played thus far. And that's been a good thing. But then it does lead into these issues where Rayshawn Davis decided that he's just going to redshirt, right? And so
this would be the perfect time for him to jump in there. But for his consideration, if he plays the rest of this year, he's out of eligibility.
Right.
So taking the red shirt is a way to extend his college career. Is it worth coming back for 3 games to lose a whole season potentially? I don't know.
And then I think you look at the player safety angle of this. It's more depth, more less likelihood that you have to keep putting guys out there. You can rotate more if you got more players around. And I think that would be a pro. I can't imagine the NFL would be against this, obviously, not that they have a say in it, but I think it would help everybody out. I think everybody would be for it. I don't know who would be against it. So yeah, I agree. Jeff in the chat says, don't want Gentry to turn into Tua. Maybe he needs a Visus helmet. I think Gentry has been wearing the Shed F7, which is my favorite helmet, by the way. I'm not a fan of the look of the Visus. No drip, absolutely none. But does perform well in that Virginia Tech study. Might be a thought.
I personally think that all football players should be wearing what do they call the
Guardian hat?
The Guardian caps at all times. Like, don't just practice with them. Wear them in games. I don't know. I'm crazy, but I would just like to see more athletes make it into their later years without suffering from dementia. That's where I'm at.
Well, what do you think of the Guardian caps? That C that they have on there, I'm not sure it's my favorite personally.
I don't. Oh, are you talking about the Cleveland Guardians?
All right, let's get into the game. SC and Penn State, 12:30 CBS. Of course, Nestler and Danielson. The Nittany Lions coming to the Coliseum for the first time since 1991. SC beat them in 1991. They're 5-0, 2-0 in the Big Ten, coached by James Franklin in his 11th season. First time the Trojans and Nittany Lions have met since the 2017 Rose Bowl. Do you remember that one? I don't really recall that one personally.
Very so
vague.
Long ago.
It's been a long time. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Anyways, Nittany Lions 4th in the AP poll, 5th in the coaches, 8th in FEI.
The pride of FEI.
18th on offense at FEI, 7th on defense, 12th on special teams. Jeff Sagarin has them 9th in the country. We talked about it in our preview before the season, in our game predictions episode, which is basically a season preview. We said that they had a simple game plan in 2013. Stifling defense and protecting the football. They were first in FBS in first downs allowed last season, first in rush defense, second in turnover margin, third in turnovers lost, third in scoring. Very good, elite team in terms of stifling defense and protecting the football. This year, so far through 5 games, not really any difference. Number 4 in rush defense. They're 8th in scoring defense. They're 14th so far in fewest first downs allowed. They are that team. That's who they've been the last several years. They beat everybody, literally everybody. They won the last 25 games that they've played against teams not named Ohio State and Michigan. SC, not named Ohio State or Michigan. James Franklin on the road against ranked teams. Big problem. 2-3 in his career on the road against ranked teams. But Alicia, there's something interesting about this matchup. You know what it is?
What's that?
SC's unranked. The Trojans lost to Minnesota, which means this game won't affect James Franklin's ranked on the road against ranked teams record. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Does that mean that he's, coming in with all the mojo to win? Who knows? We'll see. Let's talk about the offense. Penn State offense led by Drew Aller at quarterback, completing 71% of his passes. He's thrown for 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns, a pick. I wouldn't call him a runner, but he's someone who can move around in the pocket when necessary. 89 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. They do have a package quarterback, Bo Prabula. He has very similar numbers, 70% completion percentage, a couple of touchdowns and a pick, 15 carries, 105 yards, 7 yards a carry and a touchdown. He's their Jaden Mayava. But I'm not sure that everybody in State College is calling for Drew Aller to get benched. Don't know about that part.
Yeah, they're undefeated. So
Nicholas Singleton is their big home run hitter in the backfield. 53 carries so far this year, 408 yards, averaging 7.7 yards a pop with 3 touchdowns. He has 3 runs of 40-plus yards this season. He did miss last week against UCLA, but James Franklin was asked about it earlier this week. He said he's confident that he will play on Saturday at the Coliseum, so that'll be a big get for the Nittany Lions. Katron Allen, another running back for the Nittany Lions, 74 carries, more carries than Singleton, in part because he played against the Bruins last week, but only 4.96 yards per carry, not as explosive as Singleton is, obviously. Their receiving core, their pass catchers, all about the tight end, Tyler Warren. Pretty damn good. SC faced a good one in Colston Loveland in Michigan, but they didn't because he was hurt that game. This time, Tyler Warren is basically their version of Colston Loveland. And he probably, most likely, no doubt, reason to doubt it, will be on the field on Saturday. 23 catches, 289 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He leads the Penn State Nittany Lions in receiving as the tight ends. Their top receiver has only 14 catches. It's Harrison Wallace the third, 230 yards and a couple touchdowns. The other receiver to keep an eye on, Amari Evans. Julian Fleming is transferred in from Ohio State. Hasn't really had a big impact yet. 7 catches, 99 yards. Overall, new offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki from Kansas is there. And I think this offense is very similar to SC. Not completely, but in the sense they are high in success rates, but their explosiveness is not holistic, right? Like they're 4th in success rate, 7th in third down rates, 9th in completion percentage, 6th in yards per pass attempt, which is much higher than SC is. But all those things are pretty similar to where SC is, but their run game is not very explosive. They have the most 10-yard rushing gains in the Big Ten, but with 41, but only 6 of those have gone for 20 plus yards. So this is a team that gains a lot of 10-yard chunk plays, but not necessarily 20-yard chunk plays. But if you just go up and down the field 10 yards a pop, you're going to move the football, you're going to score points. So interesting matchup for SC's defense. The Trojans have the nation's #1 pass defense in terms of passing explosiveness. They limit the big plays in the pass game. Well, Penn State is, what did I say? 6th in yards per pass attempts. I think it's going to be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, Penn State is, dare I say, Penn State is kind of like the prototypical Big Ten offense in a good way. Like this is a team that leans on the run. They have big hogs on the offensive line, and that allows them to just run the ball effectively, practically against everyone they play. And they have a quarterback now who they feel good about and who can throw the ball, take shots downfield, who is protecting the football, not being a liability. In that sense, the massive difference between Michigan and Penn State is Penn State has a quarterback. We've been talking about that as a thing to watch out for with Penn State. Michigan, if they had Drew Aller, Michigan would be, in the same position that Penn State is in.
Yeah.
But Penn State has that balanced offense that they're not entirely balanced because they do just run the ball more often, but it allows them to be more balanced. It allows them to push the ball down the field when they want, and it allows them to take advantage of, mismatches in the secondary, like with Tyler Warren, the tight end. So you're right. It's definitely a very interesting matchup from the USC defense perspective because it's a tough matchup. I think you look at what Penn State brings to the table on the offensive line, and you worry that they will be able to do to USC's defensive front what Minnesota did to USC's defensive front, and what Michigan was able to do to USC's defensive front. And the nice thing about the performance of the defense on the Michigan game is USC's defense more or less came up out of those battles, I would say, with sort of keeping it more or less even, except for
they won the vast majority of the plays,
except for the times that they broke, and those were backbreaking because they were touchdowns.
But isn't it the opposite
against Minnesota? It was different because Minnesota was more or less winning most of those plays,
right,
without the big broken run. But it was like, to me, that was a worse performance for USC's defense. Even though statistically it would tell you that, Michigan was a better team on the run against USC, but Minnesota was far more concerning from a USC perspective.
Right.
And Penn State is built to do that as well. Penn State is again, like you pointed out, a team that can be very efficient and successful. They also have a playmaker or two who can break a long one, and that's basically USC's worst nightmare in this matchup is an offensive front that's gonna try to bully USC's defensive front and wear them down. And it feels like USC's defensive front. I mean, if I'm Penn State, if I'm Andy Kotelnicki and I'm watching that Minnesota tape and I'm seeing the way that Minnesota drove down the field at the end of the game, the fourth quarter, the way that they got both touchdowns in the fourth quarter, I am licking my lips and saying, you know what? We don't even need to be beating this defense terribly in the first or second quarters. We just have to keep wearing them down because they will be worn down because they don't have the depth to deal with what we're going to throw at them. And worst comes to worst, we'll take the edge when it matters late. That's my concern for USC in this matchup. Having said all of that, I think this Penn State offense is also prototypically Big Ten in the less stellar ways. You would think that a team like Penn State that has, aspirations of the college football playoff would have been scoring more in some of these games. I don't think obviously the Illinois game is a tough out. But to only score 27 points against UCLA and sort of struggle to pull away from UCLA, that's a concern. To only score 30, even just scoring like 34 points on West Virginia. Like if you're aspiring to be where Penn State is aspiring to, like you do need to have a little bit more explosiveness than Penn State is. You do need to have more oomph to your offense than it feels like Penn State does, considering what they have available to them at running back, at quarterback. They're a weird team. They're a weird team, and they're a very, very good team, which is why USC is favored, is the underdog in this game. But they're also, this year and historically now, a weird team that doesn't seem to be able to take the next step to contention. And because they haven't been able to take that next step yet, they're in this window of there is no reason, like a team like USC is not outmatched in this game the way that it feels like they are outmatched in paper.
Yeah, you say that, their offense is still very Big Ten-y, but you can say they're probably the best of any of the Big Ten-y offenses.
Yeah.
Considering that I don't think we put Ohio State in that category because they sort of are more
They're
explosive and all those kind of things, right? But to make a food analogy that Ryan Abraham would be super proud of.
Wow, you're stealing his gimmick?
I know, I'm encroaching. Penn State, you could say, okay, Big Ten offenses are vanilla, right? But I think Penn State is like French vanilla.
I love that.
It's the best version of vanilla. It's the premium, tasty version of vanilla. You know what I mean? Like It is. We keep doing this. I don't know what is happening.
I don't understand.
In our virtual studio thing on YouTube. I'm sorry. If you're watching this on YouTube, weird things just keep happening and we don't know what it is. We've been trying to troubleshoot it for the last week and we can't figure it out. But the French vanilla thing, this offense is like very good at what they do. One of our best friends in the world, we play video games with, is our friend Saman, formerly of Traveler Hitch Thursdays, which I don't think I still have on the board at the moment. He is someone we always talk about when we're playing in video games. He's Penn State, basically.
Sunday driver.
Going the speed limit, but like so damn good at it that you need to be perfect and clean if you're going to beat him.
He's the literal embodiment of the tortoise and the hare, the sort of fable.
Yeah.
He is not going to flash his way to victory, but he's going to be so consistently solid.
Yes.
That he's going to let you make the mistakes and let you be the one that takes yourself out of the game, because he's just going to be consistently, whether we're playing our F1 game or playing FIFA or EAFC or College Football 25. It's just like that annoying level of consistency that no matter what you do, he's going to get his points and he's going to do his thing. And then you're just going to have he's going to like almost bait you with his vanilla-ness into doing
French
something
vanilla.
stupid.
Yeah.
And then you lose.
Yeah. And this isn't any sort of slight on Penn State. Like they're very good at what they know what they are. They're very good at what they are. They are the best version of what they are. And they are difficult to play against for all those reasons. And they are a team, like we mentioned, that wins by taking advantage of other teams' mistakes. And boy, oh boy, is this a matchup for them. Because let's talk about the USC offense going up against this Penn State defense. The Trojans last few weeks, mistake prone. So many drives that they have thrown away because a drop on third down, an interception, a pressure that turns into a intentional grounding, which puts them behind the sticks and then forces an untimely 3-and-out, even though they've been, nearly flawless on third down all game. Like, whatever it is, SC keeps making mistakes that take away all the success that they've had. That is not the recipe to beat Penn State in the slightest. And then you look at what Penn State has on defense under new defensive coordinator Tom Allen. It starts at defensive end. This is a front seven that is very much like Michigan. We know what happened when SC played Michigan. This is basically Michigan, except the Michigan defensive line was heavy on the tackles. Mason Graham, Kenneth. I was going to say Martin. It's
Kenneth
not Martin.
Grant?
Kenneth Grant. There you go. Great at the defensive tackles. Penn State, great at the ends, which is bad news because against Michigan, who was the guy who beat up SC a million times? Josiah Stewart. SC couldn't block him at all. Well, meet Abdul Carter, number 11 for Penn State. Keep an eye on him. 22 tackles, three sacks, 8 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, a couple of hurries. He's a first-round draft pick in just about every mock draft. He's joined along with Danny Dennis Sutton, 2 sacks for him, 3 hurries on the season. Zane Durant in the middle, 2.5 sacks, 5 tackles for loss for him. Look, production from the defensive line, something that SC has not been able to generate. In the linebacker core, you got Kobe King and Tony Rojas. In the backfield, or in the secondary, Kevin Winston Jr., the safety, probably one of their best players coming into the season, the leading tackler in 2023, highly rated in the draft class, all that stuff, out for the season. So he is not going to be there. But the safeties do have 2 pretty good players in Zakie Wheatley and Jalen Reed. Those are 2 guys to keep an eye on. Jalen Reed leads the team with 33 tackles this year, but still has had havoc plays. Both those guys have had havoc plays from the safety spot, a little like Kamari Ramsey, right? 1.5 sacks, 3 tackles for loss for Reed. We mentioned the Michigan comps. This is, again, very similar. 4th in rush defense, 6th in success rate against. They're number 2 in the country in defensive line yards, number 7 in total havoc, 10th in havoc generated by the front 7, and probably the most damning thing that will keep you up at night. I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to sleep for the next 3 nights. According to Josh Pate, Penn State is number 1 in the country in time to pressure, meaning they get to the quarterback quick. What is SC's problem? They can't block. Can't block the ends. The tackles have struggled. That was the problem against Minnesota. That was the problem against Michigan. Here's Abdul Carter and Danny Dennis Sutton ready to eat. They get to the quarterback quicker than anybody. We talk about SC needs to get better in having quicker pass games. They can't throw downfield because they can't get the time that, if Miller Moss could get 2.5 seconds instead of 2 seconds, or 3 seconds instead of 2.5 seconds, SC would be that much better. Well, now it's got to be even quicker because Penn State is that good. So this is undoubtedly probably the worst matchup that you could draw up for this USC offense, because Penn State has a major advantage on the line. But I think the question, and I want to discuss this, despite being wildly outmatched when SC played Michigan, they nearly beat Michigan. They had 250 yards in the second half on offense, put together 3 scoring drives on offense. In that 3 touchdown drives in that second half, they moved the ball pretty well against that team, despite all of the issues that they had in that game, like not being able to block Josiah Stewart. So did SC's success in the second half against Michigan, despite all of the issues that they had on the offensive line and being outmatched and not being able to block Mason Graham either, did that success prove that they can beat Penn State? Because if they play like they did in the second half against Michigan, then they will be potentially fine on Saturday. Or does it not matter because the offensive line struggles are what they are? This is potentially an even worse matchup because Penn State is better on the ends than inside, and therefore the Trojans are just dead to rights. What do you make of it?
As I said to our friend Saman, who's making another cameo in this podcast, the thing about like USC ranks terribly in terms of pressures given up, and Penn State ranks top 10 in terms of pressures that they've achieved. The thing about pressures is that yes, you can end up in a situation where your quarterback's getting pressured immediately.
Yeah.
But the one thing that Miller Moss has done very well this season is throw under pressure. So what it comes down to is, can Miller Moss once again stand in with guys in his face, with the internal clock going real fast, and get the ball out quickly? That's the real question, because we saw him against Michigan begin to neutralize that the pass rush by simply just getting the ball out quickly and taking that out of the equation. And USC did find success that way, and USC did go down the field and did score that way. So it is certainly possible. It may also help USC that Penn State isn't they're still very good in the interior, but like they don't have future NFL first round draft picks in the interior the way that Michigan does. Maybe them not being less likely to win those individual battles against USC's interior linemen makes it easier for USC to focus all their energy on helping out the tackles with whatever they can to make sure that Page and Murphy are not on their own.
Keeping the running backs
ever. Yeah, keep the running backs in, keep the tight ends in, whatever you need to do. Do whatever you can to give Miller Moss as much time as possible, even if it's maybe sacrificing a little bit of what you can get out of the passing game from the running back or the tight end. But you can also sort of try to have you both ways by having the running back chip on their way out and then dump off and do things to neutralize defensive ends. There are ways to deal with that,
right?
But they do require still some level of attempting to block and do all those things. So it's not the end of the world for USC that Michigan is so good up front. That Penn State is so good up front.
Basically Michigan.
Just like Michigan. But it really does still come down to, for me, just how Miller Moss does. And at this stage in the season, my fear for Miller Moss, I have two fears for Miller Moss in this matchup. Number one, quarterbacks can be really good under pressure, but everybody has a breaking point. Everybody gets to a point where
this is what I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
Like the SC's problem the last 2 weeks has been on offense has been that they are winning 90% of the critical plays on offense by being very good on third down. They're moving up and down the field. They're getting a lot of yards. They're not getting stopped. They're hardly at all getting stopped. They're stopping themselves. They're committing their own critical errors. And a lot of those have been the result of pressure. I agree. I think Miller Moss is good in the pocket when he's under pressure. I think he does get the ball out as quickly as he can. I think he is way more nimble than people give him credit for, being able to throw on the run and move the launch point and all that stuff. But when you're getting pressured as much as SC gets pressured
and hit,
the number of in terms of quantity rises, and you only need 1 or 2 times for them to get home for it to be a disaster. Look at the Minnesota game, right?
Yeah, well, but beyond that any one of those pressures could turn into disaster because Moss's arm gets hit while he throws and you're sort of screwed.
Right.
Or he rushes the throw into coverage that he doesn't see because he's too busy trying to run for his life, and then, you're screwed. My other concern on that front is simply that when a quarterback takes hit after hit after hit after hit and is rushed after rushed after rushed after rushed, the internal clock starts to speed up and they start to get in their own head and they start to panic because they know what happens if they hold the ball for more than a second. Yeah. And then they make stupid decisions. I mean, I'm going to relay this back to college football 25. My current Memphis dynasty, the offensive line is rough. And I have been in a position with a quarterback where I don't trust that I will have even 2 seconds to throw. So at the start of plays, I am picking where I'm going to go and just blindly throwing there because I don't think I have time to scan. Right. And by doing that, I end up throwing interceptions. And it's like bad quarterback play on my part. And I'm not equating myself to Miller Moss, but like, this is what happens when teams are getting at a quarterback as often as they get at Miller Moss. And if Penn State is able to, on the other, we talked about Penn State's offense wearing USC's defense down. I think there's a universe where, coming off the back of all these previous games, that Penn State's defense very quickly wears out Miller Moss. And that's not even getting into the question of what if they injure him. It's more about like, at what point is Miller Moss broken mentally by the mental challenge that has been thrown at him to try to process all this information as quickly as he has to process it, because he literally does not have time to work with. Yeah. And it's for him, because we're going to see what he's made of. I'm not going to hold it against him if this all becomes too much. Yeah. But already I think that USC has a semi-major, I mean, it is a major issue here with Miller Moss and this offense, in that turnovers are the reason that USC is in the position that they're in right now with their record. The last 3 weeks, USC has turned the ball over 8 times. 8 times in the last 3 weeks. The last 2 games, USC has had 3 turnovers each. And you and I both agree that we don't think that Miller Moss is the sole one to blame for many of the turnovers that he has committed. But he has now committed 2 turnovers in each of the last 3 games. And you can't have that from your quarterback. And that's happening because
whether it's his fault or the offensive line's fault or anybody.
The fumble and fumbleception against Michigan and Minnesota are because of pressure and Wisconsin too. I'm trying to remember what the Wisconsin fumble was, but those are offensive line situations, and maybe it does come down to he needs to get the ball out even faster, because you can't keep letting sack fumbles happen. You just can't keep letting them happen. Right. He's doing a hell of a job of avoiding sacks in the first place. It is a minor miracle that he has been sacked as rarely as he has this season. But when he is sacked, the fact that those become fumbles is definitely a problem. And then the interceptions, again, like you understand where they're coming from, but they cannot happen.
Right.
You can't keep turning the ball over at the rate that USC is turning the ball over. And, if it was just Miller Moss having 2 turnovers every game, that would be bad enough without factoring in the Zachariah Branch of it all, the Quentin Joyner of it all. Even like McCree had that bad fumble against Utah State,
yeah.
which ultimately didn't matter. But if that kind of ball security that we've seen from Branch and Joyner and McCree in those, they're all similar fumbles.
Mm-hmm.
If that ball security is happening anywhere else in the team, it's basically a death nail because you're already factoring in a couple of understandable turnovers from your quarterback, which again is explaining all of USC's problems right now. So if USC can figure out how to play a clean game, which I fully recognize is asking a lot from a quarterback who is being put in the worst possible situation, they will have a chance against this defense, specifically because Penn State's secondary is probably is their weak point. I'm not going to say it's bad because they still are getting really, really good stuff from AJ Harris and Jalen Reed.
Yeah.
But they lost Kevin Winston. Well, he has a long-term injury, whatever that means. We have to assume that he's not.
Penn State doesn't talk about injuries at all.
We assume he's not going to play in this
game. It's long-term, which is implied that it's basically season.
Yeah, so we're going to assume. So Zaki Wheatley has come in for him at safety. And, he had a really good game against UCLA, big 4th down stop, 7 tackles in that game, probably his best game for Penn State so far. But this season, PFF has his coverage grade as 59.3. The other cornerback, Jalen Kimber, coverage grade of 60.1. If you watch back what Bowling Green did to Penn State, that there are holes in that secondary that can be exploited if you get the ball out quickly enough and are accurate enough with your passes. Like there is room for the passing game to thrive. Even watching the Illinois game, Luke Altmaier only has 185 yards. So it's a rough game for him, but he gets sacked 7 times. So like that explains a lot of what was going on with their passing game in that game. But the passes that were completed were very similar to the stuff that Bowling Green was feasting off of.
Right.
And I think that, and it's a lot of it was sort of finding room inside the zone. And I think USC can do that with Miller Moss. But it does come down to composure from the offensive line, from Moss himself, and from the receivers. And right now, this season, the biggest problem with this offense, aside from the turnovers, but also contributing to the turnovers, is a lack of composure.
Yeah. And mistakes, right? Like you mentioned Bowling Green, 254 passing yards, couple of TDs. Close game. They nearly beat Penn State, but why didn't they? Connor Bazelak threw 2 picks.
2 interceptions.
Can't do that.
Turnovers.
Can't have those mistakes.
It's number one. The number one thing is, and this Penn State defense will catch you if you give them a chance to get a turnover. They're not like turnover machines in that sense, but they are certainly opportunistic.
Still +4 on the season.
Yeah, +4 on the season, and that, large part of that is because they simply don't turn the ball over on. USC has had more turnovers last week than Penn State has had all season. So, like, this is the difference between this team and that team. Aside from the obvious of, Penn State in the trenches just is so much more further along than USC is. But the difference between a USC team that is overcoming their issues in the trenches and one that isn't is literally just the turnovers.
Yeah, and 3rd down drops. Yeah, you got it. That's
lack of composure.
It's the double-edged sword. On one hand, SC is one play away from a lot of success. That could, Lincoln Riley's right. They could be 5-0. They really could be. One play away on multiple occasions. The flip side is, and so the good thing is, like, if they make those plays, suddenly this is a damn good team, because especially on offense, they have tremendous amount of success moving the ball. No issue moving the ball. They're not really ever stopped that often. They're stopping themselves. On the other side of it, this issue continues week after week after week after week. And SC was one play away from games last year and the year before. And they were also one play away that they won in a bunch of games last year too. Arizona, Cal, Colorado, those were all one play away games that they won and had no business being that close. So SC can't put themselves in a position like that against Penn State, because Penn State will crush you if that's what you're doing. You got to be clean. You got to be clean against Penn State. Let's get to the over-under, and then we'll open up the mailbag and wrap this thing up. Over-under and predictions. Let's do it.
So you're going over.
I'm feeling bold. Give me that over.
I'll go under. I got to take an under here. I got 3 unders to take.
I'm going to do an under here.
All right, Alicia, let's do over-under. We start, of course, looking at our total record so far this season. 15-15, both of us. Not good, but remember, we play a different game than you guys at home do. Because if I set a line and Alicia takes the over, that locks me into the under. Maybe I wanted the over. Can't pick it. So 15-15. We're even, Steven. Let's go to the first one. What do you got?
All right, we're going 49.5% USC third down conversions. This might be a little high, but
Classic.
There's a reason behind this. Bowling Green, which is the team that came closest to beating Penn State this year, was 7 of 14 on third downs. That's 15%. One of the reasons that UCLA sort of stayed in that game a little bit, not really, but that they weren't getting, jiggle bagged, is because they were 6 of 15 on third down. That's 40%. Pretty solid. Everybody else, Penn State has held under 34% on third downs. Now, USC has been very good on third downs at times this season. They've been 60% or better in 3 of the 5 games. That's 6 of 10 against Utah State, 11 of 17 against Wisconsin, and frustratingly 7 of 11 versus Minnesota. You won't find very many games where you're 7 of 11 on third down and you lose, which is why it's very frustrating. LSU held USC to 3 of 9 for 33%. And then Michigan held USC to 7 of 19. That's 36%.
Can I jump in here really quick?
Yes.
I think the Michigan stuff is sort of deceiving. 7 of 9, but SC was 6 of 12 in the second half.
Yes.
Mind you, we can't just eliminate the first half. The first half happened, but the fails of the first half were so dramatic.
Yes.
That I think they skew a lot of those numbers.
Yes, for sure. So the point being is that USC has the capability of being very good on third down.
Yeah.
When the receivers aren't dropping third down passes, or there aren't sacks or whatever it is. So Penn State is good on third down, but that when they aren't good on third down, there's a correlation there between how vulnerable they are in a game.
Yeah.
So if USC gets up over 50% third downs in this game, I'm quite certain that USC will be in this game, if nothing else.
Yeah, I am going to take the over on this. Strictly
bullish.
Strictly because SC has had very good success on third downs the last 2 games. And those were both games in which SC struggled with the offensive line at certain points. Not entirely, but at certain points. And obviously this is going to be a much tougher task than facing the defensive lines of Wisconsin and Minnesota, which are good, but not Penn State good, obviously. So I think there's a chance that SC can be close to that 50%. I'm going to be a little bullish, little bullish here and take the over. Let's go to my first over under, which is over under 1.5 USC drives that end in Penn State territory without points. 4 of SC's 9 drives, 4 of 9, 44% against Minnesota ended pointless in Minnesota territory. SC did it twice against Wisconsin, plus a stall that ended in a field goal that it was a 4th and 1 and there was a false start, and that potentially cost SC 4 points by going for a field goal instead of potentially getting a touchdown on that drive, right? SC technically did this once against Michigan with the fumble against Michigan, which was then gotten right back when Woody Marks made that crazy play. But Penn State is 9th in the country in limiting successful drives. Does SC continue to have drives that fail and get no points in the second half? I mean, in the Penn State territory.
I am
1.5.
I am taking the under on this.
Okay.
I think that what we've seen from USC is pretty good about once they're in sort of in like the red zone, they're pretty good about capping off drives.
Yeah.
Their issue is that around midfield is where they like to commit their critical errors.
Yeah. From the 50 to the 25.
Yes. So can I don't maybe I missed it. Can we clarify Penn State territory is just across the 50?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm still taking the under, but I feel less confident about that because I don't when I picked it, I was thinking more like inside the 30 or something like that.
I was thinking inside the 40, but I did put it to inside the 50, predominantly because SC starts so many drives deep in their own territory. Yeah. They can move the ball and still get to the 47 and then stall. So
yeah, we'll be bullish here.
You're still taking the under. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to your next one. What do you got?
All right. We're doing 0.25 sacks by a starting USC defensive lineman.
Back again.
We're back here again. It's still astounds me, and it sucks for them that the next game is Penn State because we will hit the halfway mark for the season against Penn State, and I think it's a very decent chance that they get through half of the season without a single starter getting a sack. I will note that Penn State gave up 2 sacks to Illinois, and both of those were coverage sacks. Drew Aller had 5 seconds to throw in both of those. And I was watching extended highlights from the other games, and I can't remember. I want to say Bowling Green, they had a sack, and it was the same thing. Every time I saw Drew Aller go down for a sack, it was a coverage sack. So that's something USC hasn't really gotten this year because the defensive line hasn't gotten there particularly quick, and quarterbacks have been able to get rid of the ball down the field instead of taking coverage sacks. So
they also haven't played guys who have thrown the ball
all that much.
Brosmer last week really didn't seem like Minnesota's game plan was to run.
Yeah, and you can see why because they were having success there.
Yeah, and SC hasn't played since week 1, so the chances for coverage sacks I think have dropped because I'm taking the under on this just because I got burned last week. I'm not going to get burned again until SC starters on the defensive line prove that they can be productive. I'm going to take the under. So prove it to me before I take the over on that. Let's go to my next one, which is over under 7.5 Penn State tackles for loss. Michigan had 8 against the Trojans a few weeks ago. Penn State is averaging exactly 7 per game, but they had 13 against Illinois 2 weeks ago. 13 tackles for loss. That is insane. In the last 2 weeks, SC has been pretty good in managing not a lot of negative plays. Only 4 tackles for loss given up against Wisconsin and 3 against Minnesota. Not a lot of negative plays in that sense. Negative plays in other areas, but not negative yardage plays. So 7.5 is the line.
I want to be optimistic, but I'm simply not when it comes to these kinds of stats. I am taking the over for this one. I think that USC has certainly done a much better job of in the run game not taking tackles for loss, but I think that Penn State is just a touch above Wisconsin and Minnesota in what they bring defensively on that front.
Yeah.
I think because Penn State's ends are as good as they are, they could get into the backfield on runs quickly or for sacks or for whatever it is that USC is trying to do. So yeah, taking the over.
Yeah. All right, let's go to your last one. What do you got?
Okay, I am going with 0.5 plays in the final minute that matter.
Okay.
So, in 3 of 5 games, of 5 USC games, the game has been decided in the final minute of play. LSU, Woody Marks scores the go-ahead touchdown with 8 seconds left. Michigan, Khalil Mullings scores the go-ahead touchdown with 37 seconds left. Minnesota, Max Brausmer scores the go-ahead touchdown with 56 seconds left. Every Penn State game thus far this season has been more or less decided by the middle of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Even the Bowling Green game, they were up by 2 scores pretty early in the fourth quarter. So will USC bring Penn State down to their level, or will Penn State say no?
I thought about it. I really did. But I want to, first of all, ask a technicality. When you say plays that matter, what is the final minute literal here?
The final minute, okay, I should explain this. The final minute is literal.
Okay.
And it's not like scores.
So it's
in the
not
final
scores.
minute.
Okay. So
It
if you're
is-
driving in the final minute,
It is if you are running a play and the game is still
in the balance.
Like for instance, like
one of the teams is up 4 points and they need a touchdown.
And one team is trying to drive in the fourth quarter,
Yeah.
and I mean in the last minute. Or if one team has the ball in the last minute and they're up by 3 and they need a first down to end the game, that is a play that matters in the final minute. If that makes sense.
Okay, but let's say that the team driving gets stopped with a $1:25 on the clock, and then it's a turnover on downs because they whatever, and then
It's not the final minute.
and then the other team comes in to just kneel it out with 1:25.
Not the final minute.
Not the final minute. Okay, all right. I'm gonna take the under because of that.
Okay.
I think that's a sort of a loophole. I think if we were to, if the idea was, will the game be in the balance in the fourth quarter or something like that, I think I'd probably take this. Yeah. But I think the last minute finality to that, I struggle with. So I'll take the under. Let's get to my last over under, which is over under 26.5. The average starting field position for the Trojans being the 26.5 yard line. SC's average field position in non-garbage drives this season is the 27. Penn State's opponent average is 26.5, hence the line being 26.5. Against Minnesota, SC's average starting position was the 22. Not good. And we've talked about it before, but 28.8% of USC's non-garbage drives start at least 80 yards from the end zone, aka their own 20 or worse. Which ranks 125th in the country. So SC is a habit for having to put together long drives because they don't have good field position. 26.5 yard line. Over or under USC's average field position start.
I'm taking the under. I wish I could take the over here, but I worry that Penn State, the nature of USC's defense is, I think they will let Penn State get a few first downs, and then then they'll do their thing where they figure out how to stop them. And that just basically sets USC up to have poor starting field position. That's been the story all season. So I don't expect it to change.
All right. That is over under. Alicia, let's get to our predictions for the game. Vegas spread, Penn State -5 as of this morning when we were putting this together. The FEI projection has been pretty damn good. Is Penn State winning 30.2 to 28.1? So 2 points in favor of the Nittany Lions. Lisa, what do you got?
Okay. As somebody pointed out in the chat, I saw this video earlier today. Josh Pate, who his model has been pretty solid on USC, has USC winning this game. I'm not willing to go that far with USC because at this stage, I simply don't trust USC the way I'd need to say that I believe that USC will win this game. I do think that USC will keep this game close because despite a lot of people's perceptions, this team is not a bad team. They're just
a flawed one.
They're just a flawed one.
Yeah.
They just lack composure in key moments. And that's what's killed them. But I think that USC will certainly be in a position to keep this game close and give themselves a chance. My worry is that they've given themselves a chance in the last 2 losses and failed to close. So until USC, they closed against LSU, and so we know that they can, but we haven't really seen them do it really since that first week.
So final score?
I would also like to point out before I give my final score, I have been searching this entire podcast because I just thought of it, and I've gotten back to 2012 because CFB Stats doesn't go back further than 2016, so I'm having to go year by year on CFB reference, on College Reference. Penn State. We talk about how USC has a terrible hasn't won a game east of Colorado in a long time.
Yeah.
Penn State has not played a game west of Iowa since at least 2012, and I'm guessing
regular season games.
Games because they've been to Rose Bowls, but I don't count Rose Bowls because those you have a long time of preparation. This is not in the middle of your season when you only get a week to prepare, all of that kind of stuff. They have not come west of Iowa.
You travel a week before.
Yes. Yeah. You have plenty of time to acclimate and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
West of Iowa, I cannot find an example in more or less the last 10 years. We have seen now plenty of examples of teams coming west and struggling, teams going east and struggling in the Big Ten. Michigan goes to Washington, runs into trouble. I think this is going to be a major factor of Ohio State going to Oregon this week. This is something that you have to factor in to what you think this performance is going to look like. I wish I could pick USC to win. Still not there, but I do think this game will be much closer than people think. Penn State 27, USC 24.
Oh, you're doing the Lee Corso closer than the experts think.
Yes.
Yeah. Alicia, you picking this to be close, I think, is nuts. This is the worst matchup that SC could possibly think of. SC's tackles are horrendous. They have struggled mightily. We saw what Josiah Stewart did to Mason Murphy. We saw that Elijah Page has had issues multiple times this season. They've gotten eaten alive, and Penn State has the best defensive ends that they might face all season. Probably will face. The best tandem, surely, that they will face all season. And this is literally the best team in the country in terms of the speed of their pass rush, which, again, is SC's problem, is that they let guys in too quickly. Penn State hasn't lost to a team named Ohio State or Michigan in 3 years. They're 25-0 in those last 25 games. They don't turn the ball over, and they force teams to play clean. SC can't play clean. That's their issue. They're Michigan with a real quarterback. Not to mention a running back in Nicholas Singleton that has more 40-yard rushes this season than the patron saint of long runs against USC, Khalil Mullins. I'm not joking. This is the worst matchup that SC could have in the history of this, ever. Maybe the history of the podcast. Dead on. But hold on. I got a card here. Let's see what it's. It's a Raina Troy card.
No football reason is what the card says.
No football reason. Alicia, football doesn't make sense. College football doesn't make sense. Big Ten teams traveling 2+ time zones are 1-7, like you said. The last time Penn State came to the Coliseum in 1991, a week after SC embarrassingly lost to a team who plays on the banks of the Mississippi River. Alicia, this week, top 5 Penn State, just like 1991, top 5 Penn State, comes to the Coliseum to play a USC team that just lost to a team that lost on the banks of the Mississippi River in Minnesota. It was Memphis State in 1991. It was Minnesota this time. SC rebounded and beat number 5 Penn State 21-10. The sea was rough that day, my friends, but SC got the win. Miller Moss has never lost in a Cardinal jersey. College football doesn't make any logical sense. SC should get absolutely jiggle-bagged in this game. You're crazy if your head doesn't think that. But this is college football. Nothing makes sense. There's no football reason for USC to win, which is why they will, because that is the most USC thing ever, to suck you back in. Trojan 17, Nittany Lions 16.
I love it. I love when we get a no football reasons, to be honest. And Tim in LA,
big ups.
Big ups, no football reason, LFG. We all know what that means. I am with you. I'm not as bold as you to pick it, honestly, but I have spent the whole week with people doomsday, just glooming up on what USC is going to do in this game. And yes, there is certainly a possibility that this Penn State team is different and that they show up and show out and look like a national title contender because they are different this year. That's entirely possible. But like you said, the most USC thing
to bring you back
would be for USC to spoil this for Penn State. And the most Penn State thing would be for them to let USC spoil this for them. So, by the way, I'm at 2007 and I still have not found a game west of Iowa in the regular season.
This is like the Florida thing. Remember how Florida hadn't had a road game outside of the state, a non-conference road game outside of the state of Florida since 1991?
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna have to go back to 1991 to find that Penn State SC game, but I don't know. Yeah, college football is stupid. It's dumb. It doesn't make sense. If you don't believe me, Vanderbilt just beat Alabama. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Look at all the games.
And it's not like Vanderbilt has an offensive or defensive line that is built to match up with Alabama.
No. All right, let's get to the mailbag and let's wrap things up.
You've got mail.
All right, let's start with a super chat that we got just now from Andrew in Madrid.
It's 2 a.m. in Madrid. This is real Rotbot fandom.
Yeah. Andrew, I think this is Andrew in Madrid, formerly of Mexico City and Lisbon, New York. He's like a world traveler, this man. He's been in more cities than Angel Di Maria.
He's juicing our international numbers.
Yeah. Anyways, he says ADHD insomnia equals my first live show. They fell out of the AP number 11. From number 11, they have a chip on their shoulder. To be honest, it's the perfect time for a setup for a win. I think the biggest issue here is, again, I've said it a million times on this podcast. I think the knock on James Franklin for not beating ranked teams on the road is a little BS.
Because
most of those
the time
games
it's
are against
Michigan.
Ohio State and Michigan.
Yeah.
And guess what? Everybody loses to Ohio State and Michigan for the most part. But SC not being ranked, I think. Maybe that's the voodoo. Maybe that's the voodoo. Penn State just comes in here, has no problem because SC's not ranked. I don't know. We'll see.
Michael, help me out because Sports Reference isn't helping me out.
Yeah.
USC Penn State neutral site 2000.
Yeah.
Where was that game played?
At MetLife. Or sorry, it wasn't MetLife. It was the Meadowlands.
So,
Meadowlands.
Okay. Yeah. So for the record, we are.
By the way, score 29-5.
That game was correct. 29-5. For the record, we are at 2000.
Still nothing.
We're still searching.
All right.
So I think we might get to 1991, to be quite honest, but let's keep going with the mailbag.
All right. Let's go to a Discord message we got from our pal SJ in Santa Barbara. Do you think Mekhi Lemon has the potential to become the next Taj Washington? What say you?
I love this question because I think there's two ways to take it. Is he the next Taj Washington in the sense of like the kind of player he can be? I think so, in that he's sort of a smaller guy who can be that uber reliable receiver that USC leans on while also posing the potential of a deep threat. We've already seen USC try to find him deep. Haven't quite connected yet, but they want to do that clearly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's possible. I also think it's possible that Mekhi Lemon, and I'm way overstating because we haven't seen that much of him, but he has the feel of that Taj Washington, like just a dog who's just gonna make plays for you and be reliable and like take care of business. So yeah, I'm kind of with you there.
Yeah, and if you have lemons on the roster, you got to make them into lemonade.
Yeah.
I think the way the Taj Washington comp I like in a lot of different ways, like all the things you mentioned. At least like reliable, coming through in the clutch when you need something. He had a big catch on that last drive of the game against Minnesota. That if SC wins the game, you look at that play and go like, that was a big moment that SC moved the ball down the field on that last drive. Obviously it didn't, but he had a big play there, right? But I'm struggling with the Taj Washington comp for other reasons, because I think Mekhi Lemon is faster and silkier with the ball in his hands. Taj Lemon, I mean,
he's got a higher ceiling than Taj Washington.
Taj Washington wasn't a slouch by with the ball in his hands or anything like that. But like, I think Mekhi Lemon is probably better with the ball in his hands, and so I'm struggling to think of a comp that makes sense. Because when you think of the guys that are really silky smooth with the ball in their hands, you think of Zachariah Branch, you think of RJ Soward, you think of Marquise Lee, and like, I don't think those comps work either. The only one that comes to mind for me, and again, it's not a 1-for-1, is Damian Williams, but a smaller Damian Williams, because the size comp isn't there. And Damian Williams, I thought, was very, like, we talk a lot about like how SC has had different brands of receiver, right? Like the one brand of receiver is Mike Williams, Dwayne Jarrett, Michael Pittman, like Jacoby Lane, like those are all in the same category. And then you have another one, which are mostly the number twos, right? Like Kareem Kelly, Steve Smith, Robert Woods, Amon-Ra St. Brown, like those guys are the clinical technicians. You know what I mean? I don't think Mekhi Lemon fits in any of those categories. But the guy I think that is closest is Damian Williams. Damian Williams, the person I think he's closest to is Nelson Aguilar. And I think Nelson Aguilar is a good comp. But again, the size and lankiness doesn't match up. So stylistically, maybe those two guys, kind of, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I on all of those fronts. I also just want to update the podcast.
We're at 1994. Where are we at?
This is unscientific because I've literally been multitasking and just scrolling through schedules. But yes, Penn State has not traveled west of Iowa since 1991 when they came to USC and lost 21-10 at the Coliseum
as a top 5 team.
As a top 5 team.
To a team in
to a
USC
team that had just lost.
To a team who is from the banks of the Mississippi River.
Yeah.
Wow.
A USC team that was ranked and knocked out of the rankings before playing that top 5 Penn State team.
Oh.
I'm excited to see the tweet that you tweet about this particular thing that we have confirmed.
I'm disappointed that the Memphis State loss in 1991 wasn't at Liberty Bowl, because if it was, like, it would be even better. Because it was like literally on the banks of the Mississippi. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
from then to beating, but no, they just played a team who's from the Memphis. Isn't literally on the banks like the city of Memphis, but the university is not literally on the banks like Minnesota's university literally is. But we're cutting corners, baby. Let's go to our YouTube comment we got from the Minnesota Fallout episode from Larry. As a Penn State fan, I think Miller Moss is a beast. However, he may be quick enough to escape Minnesota's defensive line, but Penn State's defensive line is an elite unit and has team speed. USC fans have reason for concern. This one, the one thing escaping mid-level comp, it's one thing escaping mid-level comp defensive lines, but Penn State's just as good as Michigan's, but has better ends. Outside of Miller Moss is outstanding in my opinion. Sounds like most fans don't understand how the line of scrimmage affects quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I think this is a correct analysis here. I think that the challenge that USC has is that it was hard enough for them against the Wisconsins and the Minnesotas of the world, trying to find the same level of success against the Penn States of the world is even harder, and USC is still going to be just as turnover prone. So it's a very, very tough challenge here to play clean, not just in the turnover area, but also the offensive line keeping Miller Moss's jersey clean and giving him a chance. Yeah,
it's a perfect way to look at it. The other thing about the fans not understanding the line of scrimmage, I think the gripe about Miller Moss is less about not understanding that part, because I think that the argument against Miller Moss is because of the line of scrimmage stuff, but also. This is the biggest fan trope in every single sport, in every single team. This is everybody.
Mm-hmm.
The most popular player is the backup quarterback, the backup goalie, the sixth starter, whatever it is, the backup kicker. Those guys they could do better, right? Like, yeah, it's just the easiest thing to do.
Well, and it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't help this whole conversation that USC brought in a quarterback of Jaden Maiava's stature, who started a full season with UNLV, who looked very good doing so, who clearly has very good running ability, and his mobility is a big factor in his game. If Miller Moss's backup was, Max Wittick or Max Brown or, any...
I mean, to be fair, both those guys had hype around them. So
I mean, yes, that's true. but if Miller Moss's backup didn't have clear mobility advantages the way that Jaden Maiava does, I don't think we'd be having these conversations.
No, I agree. Yeah, if the backup was Jalen Green, I don't know that the conversation is that, even though Jalen Green is mobile.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone was ever calling out for Jalen Green to start at quarterback.
If the backup was Jaden Maiava coming out of high school, I don't think people would be having these conversations.
That's probably a good point too.
About that.
Yeah. All right. Email we got from Brian titled O-line culture for not protecting a quarterback. Why aren't they picking him up from the ground? Do they have no shame for their missed blocks? They act like they did nothing wrong and not caring a shit about the player they're supposed to protect. Brian from MB. Presumably that's Manhattan Beach, not Manitoba. I would assume.
I'm curious where this comes from. I'm betting that
MB. Manhattan Beach.
I'm betting that they must have seen a particular play where this was the case. I don't have any memory of seeing the line not pick up Miller Moss. In fact, I have memory of the line picking him up. I want to say that the sackception, it is Mason Murphy, who goes and picks up Miller Moss. So I don't know. I think I don't know that this is. I think there might be instances where they weren't picking him up, but I also do think there are instances where that's not.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen clips. I guess I will keep an eye out for this sort of thing. Obviously, you want your protection. Keep up Miller Moss and how the offensive line was respected back with Caleb Williams and everything he did for the offense and all that stuff. I would imagine that there isn't necessarily a problem with O-line culture in this sense, but I haven't paid attention enough to this kind of stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on it. Let's go to a super chat we got from Hokey P.
Hey.
Big ups, Hokey P. The king of all rant bots. Just got to the hotel, been driving and listening through rural Mississippi. I think we are going to shock Penn State, fight on and fight out. Is he on the banks of the Mississippi River? You don't know. Maybe. We will see. Thanks, Hokey P. You're the best. All right. Rapid fire through the questions we got here on YouTube and have starred during this episode. Kenny, whose reputation is more at stake in this game, Franklin or Riley?
I think Riley, probably. I think Riley is in a more tenuous situation with USC being in danger of going to 3-3. If James Franklin loses this game, does it hurt James Franklin's reputation, or does it just reaffirm what everyone already thinks of James Franklin?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. On the flip side, I think Franklin has the most to gain than Riley does.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Because
Franklin has a lot to gain.
I think Franklin, even though there's a lot of criticism about him, I think he has more benefit of the doubt to earn too than Riley does. Lincoln Riley is a punching bag right now.
Yeah.
Because SC's not winning games. If you win a lot of games, you turn that around. If you don't win games, it's the other way around. You know what I mean? That's win games, perception better. That's
Yes.
how life and football works. Kenny says, is the game big? I think this is tough.
Honestly, I think it's more meaningful. I don't think this game should be that meaningful. At 3-2, with the feelings around the program, what they are right now, at least my experience of the fan base and everything like that, I think that winning this game calms things down a lot. The Washington game last year, because everybody knew what the defense was at that point and sort of expected a shootout the way that it happened. I don't know that game.
Well,
I don't know. It's hard.
SC was 7-2 going into the Washington game.
So if they win that game, they're still
at number 20 in the country.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. I think that Washington was undefeated, Penn State's undefeated. I think you're splitting hairs. I think the problem here is SC sort of barfed on themselves last year with the loss to Notre Dame and Utah going into that. The problem is that SC had beaten Cal. Oh my God, our screen is just so annoying. I'm sorry, YouTube people. SC had beaten Cal the week before, but like that was an ugly win.
That was a terrible win. That was a win that felt like a loss. So yeah.
That, by the way, our previous longest Fallout episode. I'm sorry, Carcast before Minnesota. So yeah, I think that took the shine off of how big of a home game that was, even though Washington was number 5 coming in the Coliseum. I don't know. If SC wins this, then this was the biggest one. I think the perception also changes that way too. Alex says, Alicia, what does SC need to do in your honest estimation?
Not turn the ball over and avoid big plays. Yeah. Which are the basic tenets of football. So, I'm not suggesting, breaking of massive norms, but starting with not turning the ball over would be really good.
Yeah. Funny on MC says, what can we do to assist our tackles? Have the tight ends assist these tackles? Yeah, I think that's a start. Tight ends, running backs, keeping guys in. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think tight ends are a really obvious point. The running backs have been helping out, and that is something that Woody Marks clearly takes pride in. So I expect to continue to see that. I think maybe we just see more of that. The other thing too and I know that everyone wants to see USC leave those guys in to block, but there is something to be said for helping the tackles out by doing the thing where you funnel a running back out as a dump off option, because then you're not asking the tackle to hold their guy away for so long. It's just there's a quick little dump off that you can do something with, especially with a guy like Woody Marks, who we saw do a bunch of things with those kinds of passes. So, yeah, I think that 2 tight end sets would be interesting. I'm currently using USC's playbook in College Football 25 specifically because of the split back set that they have. And if Quentin Joyner wasn't in my doghouse right now, I would be so excited to see a Quentin Joyner, Woody Marks backfield, because then what you can do is you have the two backs, and then you send them out, and they chip the edges as they go out on little routes into the flat, and then you just dump it over the top to them, and it's very fun. But we haven't seen USC do that very much, so.
Yeah. Yeah. We will see how SC can be able to help. I think the downside of having those guys help is it's one fewer guy. You're sacrificing a target in the pass game, which helps the defense cover everybody else.
Especially, and this is the real problem, is if they're bringing 3 and you are leaving in tight ends or running backs to block, you are letting 8 coverage defenders blanket 2 wide receivers. You don't have very many options. Like, you might have more time, but does time equal ability to pass? Not always. That's how you end up in coverage sacks. So there's a push and a pull here, and it's not easy. And this is why football is a chess match, because Penn State is going to be trying to subvert anything that USC does to help those guys out, and USC is going to try and get under them as well. USC can also do, again, against Minnesota, the screens that USC was running, it was a variety of different kinds of screens. They were very well timed, and they were all very effective, more or less. So that's another way you can help your offensive line, is by giving them practically nothing to block. So there's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to wrap up there. We'll be back, obviously, after the game on Saturday with the CarCast, talking about SC and Penn State, and give you our first reactions to that. And then we'll be back later this week also with a USC wins if video. I think we spoiled all the points, but go ahead and watch that, give it a like, and all that stuff. We appreciate you guys giving our YouTube videos some love. Last little thing, I pulled up the Penn State game notes to see if they had like something in there about like traveling west or something like that. I don't see anything off the top of my head or off my quick scan here, but they have a little section called streaking. Penn State has not allowed a special teams touchdown in 66 straight games dating back to 2019.
Well. Wouldn't this be a great time for Zachariah Branch to totally redeem himself?
I think it would. All right. We'll see you guys next time. Give us a call on the Rant Line. Don't forget to call in during the game, after the game, whatever. And until then, we will see you.
See ya.
See ya.